Bravely Default 2 is a pretty hot game right now for its modernized take on classic RPG mechanics, but when you aren't busy saving the world, you can chill out and play one of my favorite mini-games, Bind and Divide, Exelon's favorite card game. You unlock B&D pretty early in the game in Savalon's Gambling Hall, and if you want to unlock all the asterisks and get the best ending, you're going to have to play at least a few hands of it. But if you're like me, you'll get totally engrossed and spend more time on the card game than saving the world. The game does provide a simple tutorial for the game, but for people that have never played card games before, it can still be a little intimidating as they throw a lot of information at you at once. So I'm going to go over the basic rules of the game in this video and some simple strategies that you can use to get started with B&D and get the asterisk that comes with the minigame in case you just want to grab the asterisk and then never touch the card game again. So this is what the interface looks like when you start a new game of B&D, so you can always quit back out to the world map, edit your decks, or just start the game. For the sake of showing how decks work, let's start with edit decks. This is my first deck. It's a very simple Beast Synergy deck, and something like this will get you far in B&D if you don't want to deal with a lot of complex stuff. A simple tribal deck will beat all of the things you need to beat to unlock the asterisks and such. But there's three types of cards. There's monster cards, which are going to be your bread and butter for most decks. These are the ones that put spaces on the board, which is what you need to do to win. They each have a family, so you can see this one's a beast, this one's aquatic, this one's humanoid, and certain cards will buff certain tribes. So if you have a character card like this Beastmaster that strengthens beasts and insects, it makes sense to run beasts and insects in that deck. So for jobs are similar to monsters in that they put spaces on the board, but they also have some kind of ongoing effect, and it's different per card, so whenever you get a new one of these, you're definitely going to want to read it and see what it does. So Black Mage here is one of my favorites, and what it does is every time you neutralize a square on your opponent's turn, you get a free space above it. And each one does a different thing, so every time you get a new character card, or job card rather, you're going to want to read what it does. Character cards are the most unique cards in the game. Some of them, like Orpheus here, function very similar to job cards, where they take up space and they have some ongoing effect. Like this guy debuffs humans and beasts. And then these cards with the shield in the corner are a little different. They don't take up any space, but they provide an ongoing effect. And what's neat about this is when you have an ongoing effect on the board, that can be neutralized. But if you play a character card like this, it can't be. That effect is going to happen. So that's the three types of cards. You make 6 cards to a deck. So then we'll hit battle, and it's going to flip a coin to decide who goes first. And notably, you get to pick your deck after the coin flip. So you can decide if you have a deck you like going first on, or a deck you like going second on. You can always pick based on what happens. So this time they get to go first, so they're going to start by laying a card down. Might have to wait a second. Okay, so this is going to strengthen plant and aquatic cards, and it's not a card on the board, so it doesn't take up any spaces. One of the things it did was strengthen humanoid cards, so you can see my Foley card here now takes up 4 spaces instead of 2. Those 2 additional purple spaces are because he played a card that buffs my Foley. So you can see there's 3 dark green squares and 1 light green square. The light green square is the one that has to be put on an open space, and the dark green squares, if they hit an enemy space, will take it over, as I'm sure you'll see later this game. So this card buffs demon cards, and you can see it's sitting down there on the bottom, so if I ever lose that space, I will lose that effect. Okay, so this is a good chance to show how neutralization works. So see how this dark green square up top is on top of his red square? If I play it, that square goes back to neutral. And what this card does is at the end of the opponent's turn, I get a random square for free. So really the enemy should want to get rid of this card very quickly, but the AI tends not to do that. Although he might get rid of it here. Oh no, he went down there. I think that was foolish. So the card that he just played poisons a card at the end of every turn. So you're going to see a card get poisoned here, and it's at random, so he got unlucky and it hit his. What that means is that in 3 turns, this square is going to go back to neutral. But it could have hit one of my cards, and then I would have to deal with it. So the other way that you can take spaces is with flanking. So if you sandwich a space between 2 of yours, so you can see I have a blue square over here. If I put a blue square here in the corner, all 3 of these spaces in between will turn into mine. Which is to say, we're in a very good spot here. It's pretty likely that we're going to win. Now, one thing to be aware of is the light green space has to be on a neutral square. Like, I can't play it here. But I can play it here even though the dark green square is on another space. That's fine. So in this case, even though I'm not going to get many spaces out of this, I want to play my green card here, because if he plays a red here, he'll take this space, and then he'll have the opportunity to flip more of my cards. So I'm going to play here just to defend my territory since I'm so far ahead. Although, I feel like an idiot now, because I realized he was out of cards anyway, so he couldn't have done anything else. So, good to pay attention to how many cards are in their hand. But yeah, so that's a basic game of B&D, and I won because I had more spaces than them. So normally I don't have any NPCs left to take cards from, but at the end of every game of B&D, you get a chance to take a card from your opponent. So normally after the game it would have gone to an interface where I can select cards from their inventory and pick which ones I want to take. And that's how a basic game of B&D looks. So now that you know the basics of how to play B&D, we can go over a simple deck building strategy that will get you through all of the things in the early game so that you can get your asterisk. And what I recommend doing is, this isn't the strongest deck you can make, but it's a simple deck with a low barrier of execution that will get you through all of the early fights really easily, is to just make a Beast Insect tribal deck. So in the gambling hall, there's a bunch of characters you can duel against besides the one that gives you the asterisk. So if you duel with them and take all of their cards, it won't be long before you get the Beastmaster. And his effect is that it strengthens all beast and insect cards regardless of affiliation. So if you get this card, you can just look at all of the beast and insects you have and pick the ones that take up the highest amount of spaces. So Rabbit takes 2. You'll probably have to run him at the beginning because you won't have that many beasts to choose from, but you want to ideally run as many 3-space beasts and insects as possible. This is because coverage is just the easiest way to win. Just covering the most spaces is the simplest way to get ahead in the early game. And then when you play the deck, the strategy is pretty simple. You just want to play your Beastmaster first, and then play your buffed up creatures. It's a super simple deck to make, and it's highly straightforward. You just gotta look at the tribes of your monster cards and put all your beasts and insects in your deck, and that will get you through. Really, it's still effective where I'm at, so that'll get you through at least the first 4 or 5 chapters of the game, and then you can upgrade from there as you need to. And then whenever you get a new beast in a card battle, you should replace old ones in your deck. Like, this golden bear is probably better than my sandworm, so I'm gonna swap that in. So you've got your deck and you know the basic rules, but there's still a few tips I can give you on execution to make winning at B&D as easy as possible. First, you're going to want to favor the corners and the edges when you play your cards that have powerful effects. For the opponent to flip your spaces, they have to get a card on either side of it, so spaces in the corner and against the edges can be neutralized, but they're pretty tough to flip. The AI also doesn't go for normal neutralizations very often, so you can put your Beastmaster along the edges, and your opponent will often just leave it alone. whereas if you put it in the middle, they will try to flip it. Playing in the center with your monsters can still be valuable though, if you don't mind taking a risk. Controlling the center of the board means that you'll have a good position to try to flip any card the opponent plays, but you'll also be at risk of your center being flipped, so you gotta be aware of that. I find playing the edges to be a bit more reliable, so if you just want easy wins, playing towards the edge and building out towards the center from there is pretty consistent. Another thing that you're going to have to consider is what ongoing effects your opponents have on the board. Most jobs and character cards are pretty good, so you should prioritize neutralizing or flipping your opponent's characters and jobs as soon as you can. Part of the reason the Beast and Insect deck works so well is that your opponents don't really prioritize getting rid of your Beastmaster, so don't make the same mistake that they do. All in all, a simple way to get started with B&D is just to grab the Beastmaster card, play some Beasts and Insects, and protect your Beastmaster by playing him towards the edge and building out from there. This strategy will get you the asterisk no problem, and it will stay good long enough for you to become comfortable with B&D and have your own great deck ideas. B&D is one of the best RPG card game minigames I've played, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I do. If you've built a cool B&D deck, let me know in the comments. I'd love to try some of them out, and if you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, consider hitting the like and subscribe button. I also stream on Saturdays at 11 a.m. CST on twitch.tv/BadgerBarian. Right now I'm playing Fire Emblem 3 Houses and Risk of Rain 2, so check that out if you're interested, and have an awesome week.